Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you again for joining us for online home church. It's great to see your bright and shining faces all around our nation. Thanks for making time today here in the first Sunday after Independence Day. We're glad to be back here in College Park with our friends, the Couches, after a great visit to Florida, and are excited to see you all again as well. Everybody, this gospel lesson today from the Good Samaritan story is one that is really timeless and important for those of us who are trying to follow in the path of Christ. You know, that psalm that Haynes just read for us earlier, where the psalmist said, the path of the Lord is love and faithfulness, is so easy to read, but so difficult to put into action. And that's really what this story is about today. But I will tell you, my perspective on this changed overnight. Yesterday on the way home from Florida, Rebecca and I were driving along. I was doing the readings and putting them on the website and getting ready. And I looked at her and said, tomorrow's the Good Samaritan. Like this story is so easy. It'll be simple to preach on it, because after all, the story of the Good Samaritan is one that Christians know from a very early age. It's one of the very first stories we hear in Bible school. And for a pastor, the Good Samaritan is a regular opportunity to tell folks, stay on the path of righteousness and do good to others. But my perspective on this changed overnight, because you rarely think of this story as the person who is in need, as the person who has been robbed and beaten and left for dead in the ditch. And yet somehow we managed to find ourselves in that very position overnight. You see, while we were in Florida for the last week, this new house that we have rented in College Park for Caroline's senior year at Woodward Academy, and a lovely home otherwise, had some work being done on it, and the work was finished while we were gone. The gentlemen who were working on it were terrific guys, lots of attention to detail, very clean, and the finished product was beautiful. Our new master bath, which we had not used because it was under construction, was sparkling when we arrived yesterday afternoon around 5. And when one of us decided to take a shower, we didn't think anything of it. The tile is dry. The tile is dry. Everything looks great in the master bath. Let's go ahead and put it to use before we head out to supper with Will and Caroline, our son and daughter. Lo and behold, I hear a cry from the bath as I'm in the kitchen working on something, and the water is flowing like the story of Noah. I literally found water standing in the middle of the bathroom, cascading past my feet. And so we had just unpacked all of our towels into the linen closet, and I immediately repacked them to put them at my feet to mop up this water. It turns out that the drain just simply, to me at 5 o'clock yesterday, the drain simply wasn't big enough to hold the water for the shower. The guys had probably tested it, but only for a minute. And with a person in there for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it was just too much. Water was heading into our bedroom. Water was heading into the closet where we had just unpacked 50 boxes of clothes. So it was a real moment, but we mopped it up. We called our new landlord, and they sent somebody over, the same guy that had done the work, at 10 o'clock last night. It was really great, because in the meantime, not only had the shower backed up, but we learned very quickly that the main line to the sewer had also backed up. And so when, in addition to this shower water kind of flowing through our bath, closet, and bedroom, we were also getting backed up sewer. It began to be a very uncomfortable situation at 10 o'clock on a Saturday. But those guys got here. Those guys, Jonathan and his friend, whose name I didn't even catch, working at 10:30 on our plumbing problem with their wet vac, with a broom and a mop, trying to figure out what the source of the problem was, that the shower water and then ultimately sewer water was backing up into our casa. And I have to say, we're just so grateful that they were able to not only respond, but get here and work so hard on a Saturday night. It was very easy to find ourselves empathetic with the character in the story of the Good Samaritan, because we were in many ways helpless, just like he was. We were in many ways relying on them to come to our aid, just like he was. And they did it. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to get compensated, but they did it on a Saturday night at 10:30 because they felt obligated to, just like the Good Samaritan did. And then to one up the generosity, our friends, the Couches, this morning said, hey, can you take a shower or flush the toilets? Nope. And so we are going, after church this morning, we're going over as a family to get cleaned up at the couch home. And we very much appreciate your generosity and hospitality, because that's really what the Good Samaritan story is about, right? When you're looking at it from the perspective of the Good Samaritan, it's taking the time to see those that are in need and paying attention to their needs. This story is very important from a contextual perspective, though, everybody, before I get into the details of what it means to act like the Good Samaritan. You see, a Samaritan to us here in 2022 America, especially a Good Samaritan, is a name that we typically see on churches or hospitals or on clinics. As a healthcare lawyer in my other vocation, we represent 3 Good Samaritans in different parts of our state. This is something that people over time, over 2,000 years, have felt called to minister to others in the name of the Good Samaritan because of this story. But to the apostles and the disciples and the people that Jesus was talking to that heard him engage with this lawyer in our gospel lesson today, this was shocking. This was shocking because the people of Israel, where Jesus was, and around the Sea of Galilee and in Jerusalem, hated the Samaritans. The animosity, the hatred went back hundreds of years. Basically, the 12 tribes of Israel that came from, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Joseph had 12 sons. They split into tribes and set up Israel, right? There was the northern kingdom of 10, and then the southern kingdom of 2. They were rivals, but they got along, and they all worshiped Yahweh. When the northern kingdom fell to the kingdom of Assyria, half of the people in the northern kingdom were dragged off into slavery, other half stayed, and the Assyrians started mixing in, just like happens in every situation where one country is conquered by another. So the people in the northern kingdom very quickly began to, over the course of 100 or so years, worship Yahweh, our God, and idols brought to them by the kingdom of Assyria. The southern kingdom, Jerusalem and Judea, also fell to Babylonians, and they were also dragged off into exile. But the people that we read about here, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the priests in the high temple, never gave up to false idols. And so not only when they came back did they rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, and the Samaritans offered to help, the Judeans said, no thanks. We don't want your help because you've mixed in with the Assyrians. You are, as Harry Potter would say, you're mudbloods. We're not going to mix in with you because you violated the law of the Torah. Deuteronomy says very clearly that the chosen people shall not mix with others. And so this hatred from the Southerners against the Northerners, sound familiar, went on hundreds of years. So by the time Jesus was born, 500 years after all of this stuff started, the name Samaritan to the people in the southern area where Jesus was very caustic and something that really got people riled up. Especially, I just read this morning as I was kind of revisiting the history of it, some Samaritan, basically what we would call today terrorists or a hate crime, went to the temple in Jerusalem and defiled it. They threw dead bones of non-Jews into the temple, and that was basically like tearing up a church or synagogue like we read about today. That was all very raw for the people of Jesus's time. And so when he uses these examples of a priest, a priest of the high temple who's going past this guy laying in the ditch, it doesn't even give him the time of day. Or a Levite, that's one of the 12 tribes of Jerusalem, who were supposed to be the holiest of the 12, walking by him, didn't give him the time of day. And then this filthy Samaritan is the one who stops and helps him. That had to be shocking to everyone, but especially to the man who Jesus was talking to the lawyer, who probably held himself in high regard as a member of the people of Israel and probably worked in Jerusalem, maybe even at the temple. So why is this shocking contrast so important for us 2,000 years later? Well, the answer is that if this Good Samaritan, this person who everybody who heard the story was thinking, that guy is so foul, he can't possibly do anything good. If that guy can stop and do good, isn't it so much easier for us all to do good? The Old Testament lesson that Kathy read this morning, where Moses is saying, all you got to do is love God more than everybody, any other God. And all you got to do is love your neighbors as yourself. That's not too hard. You don't have to go up to heaven. You don't have to climb a mountain. Just love. And yet it is so hard. And so time and again, we have to listen to this Good Samaritan story to remind ourselves that we have to go the extra mile in helping others. And furthermore, that this Good Samaritan stopped to help someone who probably hated him. To help someone who probably hated him. And so think about in your community, wherever you are in America, as you're listening to this story and this sermon, think about where you are. Think about the people that you wouldn't normally stop to engage with. Think about the people who, if they approached you, you would say, get away from me. I can't help you. You're one of them. That's exactly what this story is based on and why it's so important for us to engage with it today, because you just never know where the cry for help is going to come from, whether it's a neighbor in need of clean water or whether it's someone who needs help in stopping a leak or plumbing in the middle of the night. This notion that we hear when Paul is talking to the people of Colossae that Haynes read earlier, to the Colossians, is be open to the Spirit and let God call you in the way that he sees fit. If God calls you to stop somebody, to stop and help somebody, even though you may say, no, this is not somebody I want to engage with because they are different from me, that may be exactly what God has in mind for you. That includes lawyers. And so this one of the funniest parts of this story that I always love, and I think in one of the other synoptic gospels, the last line is not Jesus saying, go and do likewise, lawyer. It's the lawyer didn't ask him any more questions, right? He was basically tired of getting ragged on by Jesus. Instead, we have this story today that I want to just take a moment, because we do have a few lawyers in the congregation today. I want to take a moment to point out that it's no accident this story is with a lawyer, right? If a fisherman says, Jesus, who's my neighbor? Or a farmer, or a shepherd, right? Or a carpenter, the story's totally different. Who's my neighbor? But instead it's a lawyer, because he's trying to trap Jesus. He's trying to get Jesus to say something that doesn't fit with the law of the Torah and the law of the land at that time. And then furthermore, when the lawyer gets the answer right, love your neighbor as yourself, love God above all others, he still pushes one more little bit, like all lawyers are prone to do, pushes one more little bit, as Luke tells us, to justify itself. And what does he get? He gets a response that 2,000 years later, we're still telling that story. So I guess as a lawyer myself, I will just say, be kind to lawyers, but don't be afraid to tell a lawyer joke because most of the time they deserve it. Everybody, the final thought on the Good Samaritan story is one that I think is what makes it so timeless. That the stopping to help the guy in the ditch is one thing, and he did. He stopped, and we hear in our gospel lesson from Luke today, he gave him wine, gave him oil, bandaged him up, and then what did he do? He didn't just stop to deliver first aid. He didn't just stop to help stem the tide of the bleeding. He went the next step, right? He went the next step. There's a whole range in our nation of laws that are called Good Samaritan laws, where people stop for a roadside accident or some kind of emergency situation and do the best that they can, and they're held immune because you're just stopping to do the best that you can. We want to encourage that kind of behavior as a nation. But what the Good Samaritan laws don't do, because you really can't compel this unless you have a heart that's called by God to assist others, is what the Good Samaritan did next. He put him on his animal, which is probably a camel, and took him to the inn. And then he didn't just drop the guy at the end and say, hey, this guy's sick, he needs a place, innkeeper, give him a room. What'd he do? He paid for the room. And then, not just to say, hey, innkeeper, take care of this guy while he's healed, and then, after a couple of days, let him go. The Good Samaritan said, I'll be back. And when I'm back, I'll pay for whatever else you need, whatever food or medicine or water or lodgings that this guy incurred while I was gone, I will pay for. The extra mile. The Good Samaritan went the extra mile. And so I want to encourage you, when you are in an opportunity to help others, not just to give, but to give generously. Give till it hurts. Give until you feel like I have met this model that Christ gave us in the story of the Good Samaritan, because it's that extra mile that will help us follow the path of love and faithfulness that God makes for us. Amen.
Amen.
And now everyone around the world and across time, let's say together with Christians the Nicene Creed.